Good evening, everyone. I'd like to get started. We have a very, 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 very special guest tonight. I want to make sure we have as much time with Alice Waters as possible. Before we get started, though, I'd just like to take a moment of silence to hold in our hearts the people and the families and the communities that have been affected by the horrific violence in California in the last week or so. That's really interesting. It's live streaming on my own computer. I apologize for that. I wanted to share with you a statement from the United Farm Workers because many of the victims, particularly those in Half Moon Bay, were farm workers at a mushroom farm. And I just wanted to share this with you. These workers were part of the too often made invisible yet essential agricultural workforce that feeds America and the world. As farm workers and as human beings, they deserved far better. We dream of a nation in which all farm workers, regardless of ethnicity or national origin, are treated with dignity, in which our streets no longer bear bloodshed after bloodshed, and which our hearts have a moment to heal in between breaking. So this gets very close to home, and it's very relevant to our theme here of that everything is connected. Thanks to Francesca, we have a place where we can contribute. And on the right is an image of a memorial that's been put up in Monterey Park. I also just wanted to really share 3 questions that came out of one of our students' reflections from the class, which I think really exhibits the thoughtfulness and care of the people in this class and the refuge that we can take in the solidarity of being here together. How can we move forward as communities? How can we build coalitions and trust? How can we take care of each other? So I think with that, we'll dedicate this class to all of those impacted. I think we're all impacted, but those closest and in peril as a result of these really heinous crimes and actions. So with that, I just wanted to offer you a ray of hope. This is the rose garden at Idea Garden after being pruned way back, and it's a little hard to see, but these are all now rose bushes full of thorns, and I have all the cuts to show for it. But in a matter of a few weeks, I'll keep you posted, and you'll see all of these bare branched plants come back with exuberance and vitality. And it's a ritual of spring, it's a ritual of the garden and of the farm and of life and the cycles of life. And certainly I hope brings you just a tad of hope like it does me. So last week we started with our patron saint, Wendell Berry, who reminded us that eating is an agricultural act. I introduced you to the pleasures of eating a raisin, savoring a raisin, a practice of mindful eating, and also a little bit of a microcosm of how everything is connected in the food system, from the source to our microbiome. And I also shared with you a little of my own story and my adage, one thing leads to another. And I was thinking that it's important to remind you that one thing leads to another is not a linear process. It's really a iterative process, and one full of learning and one full of serendipity. Also, I wanted to point out that, when this class started, when Alice started this class 12-something years ago, with Michael Pollan, The food news was not on the front page. Today it's on the front page. Today, you look at the New York Times, there's a story about people in the UK being unable to eat what they used to eat because of the rapid inflation. You look on the next page, it talks about how the invasion of Ukraine by Russia is causing massive disruption to the production of wheat, the export of fertilizers, and really, if you talk to the people at Barilla, it's completely disrupting the production of pasta throughout Europe. It seems far away from us, but it's just the ripples are everywhere. We have an opportunity for you to stay informed. One of Alice and my favorite sources of objective, clear-headed reporting comes from a publication called Civil Eats. And in your syllabus, you have a number of readings from Civil Eats. And thanks to the generosity of the editor-in-chief of Civil Eats, Naomi Starkman, who's been a frequent guest at our class, she is gifting each of you a 6-month subscription to Civil Eats, hoping you'll get hooked on it and become a member. So that's a wonderful resource to understand food systems issues. Also, we have Food Politics. This is one of my go-to sources. There's a daily blog that Marion Nestle, the renowned Marion Nestle, who will be here in class with us next week, she writes, and she writes it in this wonderfully candid, kind of acerbic it's her style, and I think you'd really enjoy looking at that. We'll put the links to each of these in your weekly announcement. One other announcement, this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, here at the Haas School of Business in the speaker forum on the 6th floor of Chu Hall, we're holding our first ever in-person Plant Futures Symposium. Plant Futures is the first college-based program of its kind focused on accelerating the transition to a plant-centric food system. And as you'll learn throughout the semester, there's a lot of reasons why that's a very potent leverage point in addressing both climate change and the epidemic of chronic disease or diet-related disease around the world. And we've got just an all-star lineup of change makers from your peers to the elders. And Michelle Nishan, pictured there, and Marion Nestle will be keynoting on each day. It's a 1-unit class. I believe there may still be room in it, but you can look it up. It's UGBA 192T.22. Hope to see you there. So this week we're going to talk about mindsets and skill sets. Mindsets are the way we see the world. They inform the way we think, act, decide. Skill sets are going to be the capabilities that you can employ to advance your change-making agenda. And throughout the semester, we're going to identify different skill sets and then hopefully bring them to light with examples with our guests. And I think it's going to be especially fun with Alice tonight. So just thinking about mindsets, if you think about how you wake up in the morning, we talked last week, a mindset might be a growth mindset, an optimistic mindset, a mindset of potential. We can also walk around with a mindset of fear or discouragement. But where do you think a change maker's mindset begins? What is the essence of a change maker's mindset? Anyone? Volunteer. I loved hearing your thoughts on this. Anybody have any ideas? Yeah. Growth mindset, yeah. The mindset of possibility. What else? Yeah. Creativity. A little frustration, yeah. A little agitation about the status quo. Yeah, that's wonderful. Where else? Way back there. Disruption. Okay, yeah. Changing the status quo. Connection, a desire to connect. to be part of the we? I'll share my answer to my own question here. I think it starts with these ideas. How can I help? How can I help? Doesn't have to be move fast and break things. It might just be the person next to you. How might I help? And how can we make it better? How might we make it better? So I think this kind of altruistic impulse or intention is at the heart of every change maker. They wake up thinking about, how do I make it better? And how can I help? So last week we talked about this class has really got three components: systems thinking, or systems in action, how everything fits together. Ethical leadership, it's like, how do we bring our values, our moral judgment to guide and influence people, the conversation, the culture, and then how do we bring an entrepreneurial sense of agency, that kind of courage to transcend our fears, to transcend what the obstacles that hold us back or that are in our way. How do we be resourceful to make change? So this week I asked you to read a couple of papers. One was from the Journal on Food Ethics, which was just launched in 2016. Imagine this is a whole new field of academic study. And I hope that that article gave you a sense of the complexity of the ethical dilemmas and trade-offs that are inherent in food systems. Now, values are what we hold dear, and our values shape they shape our mindsets, they shape our choices, our actions. This week's assignment will be fun for you because you'll get to kind of assess your own, or identify and clarify your own values and begin to map those onto your own behaviors as they relate to your food life. So we're living in a world right now where there are very disparate values held by people, and it's important to not assume that the person next to you shares all the values that you do. Here at Berkeley, we have a set of values that I think bring people here. Certainly, Alice can talk about this more, but the value of free speech is inherent in this university. At the Haas School of Business, we have some defining principles, which are really values: beyond the status, beyond yourself, questioning the status quo, students always. These are kind of values and principles that are shared that bring us together. We're also going to talk about leverage points. These are the places in a system where you get a disproportionate result from a little bit of change. So change makers are always looking for those places in a system where I can make a little bit of movement and get a big impact. And of course, we're going to talk about how do systems actually change. This is a wonderful graphic. It's a little bit difficult to see, but this is based on the work of Donella Meadows. And she really was one of the, she was like the godmother of systems thinking at MIT. And you're going to read a paper that she wrote called Dancing with Systems, which I love because she equates systems theory and systems thinking a little bit to like playing jazz. And we're going to focus tonight and next week really on these first couple parts of the system, which is, first of all, being able to see the paradigm that we're in. That's like getting out of the fishbowl that we're in and actually being able to observe objectively what's happening. Can I observe? Can I tell the truth without blame or judgment? Can I describe what actually exists, whether I like it or not? And then the second part of that is kind of the mindset that I bring to it. And this will become illuminated in conversation with Alice. And we're indebted to Alice for everything she's done in the world. It's not every day that we get a world-famous celebrity in our midst. But recently I visited some friends, and I think it was before one of the big football games. I don't watch football much, but they had it on, and I was amazed that they had this like 3-hour program on before the football game where they explained everything that was going to happen at the football game. So I wanted to do that tonight before Alice talks. So remember this map from last week? This is our healthy food system diagram. And I wanted to illustrate to you a little bit of Alice's playbook. So as she tells her story, you can relate it back to these concepts that we're working with. So Alice, you'll hear, and as you read in the first chapter of her book, and that introduction she offered to Wendell Berry's essay last week, she has done a lot with social and cultural transformation, really helping change the way people eat and the way they think about eating. She's also worked on supply chain. These are rather business school terms, but supply chain transformation in terms of changing the supply, the way the supply of food gets to people. And she's also worked to transform the relationship with farmers and their equity in the food system. So I show you two places where Alice's work intervenes. First, really in that preparation and serving of food. Where is that? That's here. Okay. And then in the system of supply here, working directly with family farms, local farms, to disrupt the system of supply. So the definition of entrepreneurship is actually to reorder the system of supply. So you can see that in Alice's model, she's going direct from the farm to the restaurant to the eater. And she's cutting out all of that extra part of the system for the most part. And this sounds simple, but this is a really transformative idea. And you're going to hear more about how this idea is getting applied. Now, not only did she do this, but she also, instead of just disposing of the waste from the restaurant, she would compost that in association with the farmer. So she created a system unto herself with the restaurant and the work. So just to preview, Alice's multidisciplinary innovations, and I've had the pleasure of experiencing these for over 30 years now, but it starts at the source and sourcing with the seasons. So working with farms over the seasons. Feeding people is a transformative experience. We talked about that last week. That's sourcing, cooking, serving in the most beautiful and creative ways. And then educating people about that experience, and then going beyond education, advocating. So these are the dimensions of Alice's innovations. I just want to offer 4 quick ideas of skill sets that we're working on. The first is really important for entrepreneurs, for anyone really. It's called tracking. It's really an indigenous human practice. It's paying attention. It's making connections. It's following how things connect. And so taking a wide view and then taking a narrow view. And in systems thinking, we call this zooming out and zooming in. So being able to go up and get a 35,000 foot view of something, and then a very close-up macro view. There's a beautiful film that was made years and years ago by Charles and Ray Ames called Powers of 10. If you haven't ever seen it, it's the most really evocative film about zooming in and zooming out, and how that change in perspective can change the way we see the world and perceive the world. Another really key skill set of entrepreneurs is pattern recognition. So building on tracking and zooming in and zooming out, we're really beginning to recognize patterns. And one of the things we're going to ask you to do throughout the semester is track the patterns between the different change makers. What do you see that stands out and is in common? And then finally, bridging. We talked a little bit about this last week, but bridging disciplines. Bridging disciplines. Innovation happens when disparate ideas from disparate communities that often use disparate languages come together. and are cross-pollinated or intersect. You can walk around this campus. The School of Business uses a different language than the School of Public Policy. It's all English, but it's a different set of acronyms and mental models, and that's different than the School of Public Health. So one of the beauties of this class is we've got people from all across campus, and hopefully we're going to be sharing this skill set of bridging. So without further ado, it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce the founder of Edible Education, among other things, Alice Waters.
Yeah. Well, I'm really delighted to be here. And I thought I would choose this slide, see whether you can find me. I think I'm way over there in the back on the left, hidden. But I came to Berkeley in the fall of 1964. And something was really going on here. That was going on here. It was both protests around free speech, but it was also about the war in Vietnam. And I came from not a very political family, although my mother was a communist in college and protested a little bit, but basically they weren't involved with politics, and we all grew up with an understanding that we could do what we wanted to do and when we wanted to do it. And I think I had a button of "I like Ike" way back because my father pinned it on my shirt. But I was very lucky. I grew up in New Jersey. And my parents had a victory garden during World War II. And I ate strawberries as a little child out of that victory garden. But they had that victory garden for their whole life. And ultimately, they ended up moving out to California. And when I'm thinking about this now, and I'm a little bit rambling on, intimidated by this classroom so full of college students. I was a Montessori teacher, but I taught 3 to 6-year-olds. But she taught me something incredibly important. And that was that you learn by doing. You learn by doing. And the other thing she taught me was about the education of the senses, that those are our pathways into our minds, okay? So when we're smelling and touching and tasting and looking very carefully, listening very carefully, that's how we get information. And because of this world that we live in that is full of computers and all of the above, that we're not doing this. We're not eating food with intention. We're not smelling it. We're not really tasting it. And so, getting back to this picture, go on to the next one, Will.
If I can, I might have to come closer.
Oops, that's the one. There I am in the middle with Stop the War. We can go on to the next one, I think. But when I was at Berkeley at that time, I didn't take classes from anybody who wasn't part of the free speech movement. So that limited the classes that I took. But in another way, it opened my mind. I took Beethoven symphonies. I took a film class. I took, what else did I took an astronomy class. And none of it fit into a major. And I went to France my junior year abroad. And I thought, well, I would take a course at the Sorbonne in the cultural history of France. Well, I went the first day to class and it was all in French. And I said, oh my God, and I was there with my girlfriend and we said, we can't do this. We can't learn French this quickly, we can't follow it. Let's just eat. No, that wasn't how it began. We decided to travel around France. And so we would go out to the end of the subway, the metro, get off there, and hitchhike. And we hitchhiked out to Brittany in France. And we went down to the waterfront, and people were just pulling in buckets of mussels and cooking them up in this little restaurant. And I never tasted anything so delicious in my life. And that's how it all began, with taste. But it was the aliveness of that food. And that was a time in France that it was a real slow food nation. I don't think they had any olive oil, north of Paris. They didn't have any in the stores in Paris. That was south of France. You had butter, delicious butter, in the north of France. And I got completely engaged with the way that people bought food. It was at the farmers' markets. They were all over Paris. And there was one big marketplace, Les Halles, which you probably know about, where the food would come in, it was butchered or was sold to all of the people around Paris who had little stores. And I couldn't understand why people would wait for 20 minutes in a line to get a baguette until I tasted it. And then I waited in line. But what I learned was you got connected with other people while you were standing in line. And even here in Berkeley, I know why that line exists down at Acme Bread Company. Because people want that warm loaf of bread. And then they start talking to each other in the line. So it's way more than just getting the baguette. It's this kind of communication that's happening. Now this slide is very important to me because I figured that the two things that we all do or all should do is have enough food to eat, and we all go to school. So if we want to make change, I think that's where we need to make the change, in the public schools around food. And because I was in Berkeley in the 60s, and because I knew what we did what happened there in Berkeley went across the country and went around the world. And I thought if we could change the way that the University of California procured food, if they did it like we do it at Chez Panisse, which is buying directly from the farmers and giving them the real cost of the food, not asking for wholesale price, giving them retail price, which they need to pay the farm workers the right amount of money to work on the farm. And I realized we could take all of our compost, our edible leftover scraps and all of that back to the farm and bring the food. And it was very instrumental for the restaurant that my father decided to go around Northern. He went to Davis, asked for a list of all the farms within 1 hour of Chez Panisse, and then he and my mom went to visit every farm. And they came back after 8 months, and they said, there's only one farmer that's crazy enough to work with Chez Panisse, and that is Bob Kennard. I don't know whether you know about him, but he was a permaculture guy, actually a regenerative agriculture person before that term came into being. My father went there and he said, where are the crops? And Bob just pulled away the weeds and he said, right there. He said, my carrots are 25% more nutritious than anybody else's. And we all laughed. And of course, they were. They were tested, and they were. Because he knew that all those little bugs and worms and everything that was in the soil was making that carrot as nutritious as it could be. And mind you, taste came along with that. And so for almost 40 years, Chez Panisse has had Bob as the main person growing the food for the restaurant. We serve about 500 people a day when we're fully working. We are now, but normally we're open 6 days a week and we serve lunch and dinner. But what's really important here is the food, cutting out the middleman, made that food affordable. And Bob got us to eat everything. He got us to eat nettles. He would send a whole box of nettles. He'd say, make something out of them. Well, we made pizzas with garlic and olive oil and nettles. And people think that those are the best pizzas at the restaurant. But they are also the most nutritious. So Bob knew all about that and communicated that directly to the restaurant. So working on that model, I decided at the pandemic that maybe I should call my friend Janet Napolitano, who was the president of UC at that time, to come over and have lunch in my backyard. And she came. And I said, Janet, could food that was purchased directly from the farmers organically be part of the carbon neutrality initiative you have for 2025? And I was astonished to hear her reply. Well, organic, yes, maybe regenerative a few years after. And I said, Janet, would you say this to the Board of Regents when you leave office? And she said she would, and I've got her on tape. But what was important about that was that she really felt like it was a possibility. And that if we bought food differently, if we decentralized so that every campus would have its own farmers and own producers, just imagine what that would mean to the state of California and to the health of all of you. I mean, it's just amazing. And of course, I wrote climate first because it is what is happening. And if we don't address it right now in this delicious way, because this is the only solution that is delicious and easy to do, is grow your own food organically, regeneratively. That's what we did during the war with those victory gardens. Just imagine how much carbon could be pulled down. And that's what Al Gore has done at his ranch, his big ranch and farm in Tennessee. And actually, I watched him or listened to his speech at the World Economic Forum today. And boy, was he pounding his hand on the table. He really was. He said, you know, we've known about this for a long time, and we are not doing what we need to do to address climate. But just think what happens when you change the procurement of food, when you change what you buy and where you buy it. You learn a lot more than just about taste. You connect with the people who grow your food, and you value them. I'm considered a farmer hugger. I guess that's what you would say. But they're the most important people to me. And all the people that produce the food, the ranchers, the fishers, the people who make the bread and make the tortillas. And if they all bought that food from local people, it could really change everything overnight, really. So anyway, I'll pause there. I know I'm talking too long and just off the top of my head.
Come sit here. The state of California is the 6th largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
And it is this unique place where so much grows. So we're right here. I guess, how do we get this group of people on your team to change the way the university here sources and prepares food?
Well, I think there are a lot of things that can be done. And I know that you need to be immersed in the experience to really to make the change. So I'm going to invite you all to Chepanese. And we should have, maybe in the spring, we should all have a very big dinner outside. I've wanted to plant that crescent.
Who's in? Right.
All right. No, but it's again Montessori, learning by doing. And during the pandemic, I just planted a victory garden with a victory garden sign in my front yard. I dug up the flowers, decided it was going to be all vegetables. And I'm not a gardener. I wasn't a gardener. I've always been a picker, but that's why I admire gardeners so much. And I just love getting pictures of Will's garden. And it's so important to have that experience of watching the vegetables grow, to plant the seed. And that's the other part of, aside from Chez Panisse, now 51 years old, the experience of doing that there gave me the courage to really talk about it. And I started the Edible Schoolyard Project, which you probably know about, in a middle school in Berkeley. And I thought, it was at the request of the principal of the school, could you come over and beautify the school? I know you do something about food and gardening. Come on over. And I went. And I just saw this place. It was built in 1921 on 17 acres of land for 500 students. And now there are 1,000 students, and half the acreage has gone to the city of Berkeley. And Neil Smith, the principal of the school, said, what do you have in mind? And I said, how about we plant a garden on this old piece of land that used to have bungalows on it. It was full of weeds and rocks. And I said, we could plant a garden there. Not to teach gardening, but to teach the academic subjects. Biology, math, science could all be taught outside and in that garden. And then I saw this bungalow. I said, who's in that? He said, well, it used to be used, but we don't use it anymore. And I said, how about a kitchen classroom? Again, not to teach cooking per se, but to use cooking to engage the students in the history of a country. So when they're learning about the Middle East, they're making hummus and pita bread and chickpeas and all of that. And it engages them with all their senses. And they love it. It's really so amazing. And I invite you all to go and visit, not all at once, but to visit that project, because it has, Will, you have to help me, it has inspired 6,200 schools around the world. Show the other side too. But it's in Saudi Arabia and Uruguay. And people understand that we're talking about human values. We're talking about empowering children to learn in this way and to sit around a table and share the food that they have cooked together. And it's almost, when I go into that classroom, it sounds like the kitchen of Chez Panisse. They're saying, do you think I have enough salt in that? Does it need a little more olive oil? And we had one of those great classes, what's it called? It's on television, the Power cooking class. Uh, Iron Chef, thank you, Iron Chef. But we don't judge them just on taste and the way it looks. We judge them on how they cleaned up, how they worked together, how inventive they were. And it was so amazing to hear them speaking. Well, we should have not roasted the peppers because they'd lost their color. And it wasn't as beautiful as it could have been in the salad. I mean, it's that kind of regenerative conversation that happens.
You say 6,200?
6,200.
So, and it's a loose knit federation, really. I mean, these are all people that took the inspiration and made
Yes,
it their
and
own in their very local
I thought I
environment.
should go on a trip and visit all 6,200.
I mean, what's important, it's open source. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a license. It's not a business. It's an idea.
It's an idea.
It's an idea that has spread beautifully and has been adopted and evolved and changed. And what's really fun is to see the educators get together and share
Yeah.
what they have come up with.
Yeah.
So it's this beautiful kind of collective energy around an idea. And then there's been other groups that have created kind of similar
Yes.
ideas.
Yes, absolutely. And we did 5 other schools around the country to have proof of concept. We did one in LA, one in New Orleans, one in Brooklyn, one in upstate New York. So we wanted to know whether it worked in different climates, how it changed with the culture of the place. And I just loved going to New Orleans recently because it was, you know, all of the same ideas, but interpreted in the most beautiful way. The kids sang songs that they made up on the way out to the garden. I mean, it was full of a kind of a connection with the neighborhood and a lot of ideas that really inspired me.
Well, I love starting here because we're so immersed in a world where scale is talked about. This is really about replication. This isn't scale. This is
No, it is.
Well, it's scale, but it's
But
replication.
Exactly. It's different. And I really never liked that word scale.
I know you don't. That's why I brought it up.
That's right. I don't.
One of our favorite topics.
Because I think of that education, and I've really thought about it a whole lot, and that's why I love this class, because it's being taught differently, and you're hearing everybody's voice, and it's so important.
So speaking of voices,
Yeah, voices.
we're going to take a short break. Maybe Viana can advance the slide to the break slide. We're going to take 10 minutes, and then we want to come back and hear your voices.
Yeah.
There's 2 microphones here, one in the front and one there. And some of you had beautiful questions in your reflection or you put on our wiki, so we would love to hear from you. Come down and ask a question to Alice, and we'll spend the rest of the class really in conversation tonight, okay? So come back in 10, and we'll see you then. Okay. Oh, and also, I brought oranges for you tonight, so help yourself. They may not be the most beautiful cosmetically, but they're delicious.
Did you have this last time?
Yeah. I guess you like the oranges. Alex, maybe can you turn this up just a tiny bit? Thank you. Welcome back. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Alice. I think you got a little bit of feel for what has inspired her. I thought it would be fun to actually talk about inspiration because it's so critical. She was so inspired by what she discovered in France. And we were talking earlier, too, that we've both been inspired by two amazing change makers. One you've been introduced to already, Wendell Berry, and the other we were going to honor, Rachel Carson. It was about 60 years ago that Rachel Carson wrote her book, Silent Spring. Who's heard of Rachel Carson? Oh, good. Good. Because Rachel Carson really, Rachel Carson was a marine biologist and a scientist and an author. If you read Marion Nestle's memoir, you learn that she was a marine biology. She was very interested in marine biology as an undergrad at UC Berkeley. But Rachel Carson was sent a letter to the editor that someone wrote who was incensed about airplanes flying over their fields and spraying DDT, this was in 1958, to eradicate mosquitoes. And DDT had been used, quote unquote, very successfully in World War II, and it came to the market with lots of propaganda and public support and was adopted very quickly as an agrochemical. It was one of the first synthetic chemicals. And this letter that this woman wrote to her local newspaper talked about the dead bird carcasses that they were discovering around their community. And this was sort of the first signal and shot around understanding the unintended consequences of technological innovation. And does anyone know how many years it took to ban DDT? Does anybody know?
Well, we may have banned DDT, but we still got the poison in the ground.
Anyway, we wanted to pay homage tonight and just recognize Rachel Carson's work as someone who transcended her work as a scientist and really gave voice to issues that stay with us today. And Alice and I were talking about her and thought we would mention her as another source of inspiration. And I think finding the sources of inspiration is a source of energy and endurance. I think one of Alice's characteristics as a change maker is her persistence. We talked about last week, there aren't many, if any, that I know of restaurants in the world that have been around for 50 years. There's something about enduring value that is so special. So I think what I remember most from the first half of the class was that offer to do the dinner outside. So we're gonna have to organize that. It's not gonna be something that Alice cooks herself. We'll have to all do it together, so we'll figure out. Who's got a question? I'd love for you to come up or come to the microphone. Don't be shy. This is a chance to share your thoughts. This is the best part of the class. So some of you offered questions online. So if you don't want to ask them, we can ask them for you. Introduce yourself. Tell us like what class and program you're in just quickly,
right,
and then fire away.
My name is Max. I'm a film and nutritional science student. And I wrote this big long question on the sheet, and I've put a shorter version of it in my notes. So here it goes. So a common critique that I've seen of the slow food movement is that for many it's not economically sustainable or realistic. And this seems to be constructed in this very particular sense of realism, informed by maybe the limitations of a working class perspective. And those who subscribe to this critique might claim that investing in slow food requires a certain degree of extravagance, or at least an obliviousness to the economic disparities of the working class. And so, as this critique is one of the most major things standing in the way of the movement, how do you respond without perpetrating this myth of requisite extravagance?
Well, I love that question.
Thank you.
I love that question because it's the answer that's out there in the culture is been put out there by the fast food industry. They want you to think that that you can't possibly afford organic food, that it takes too much time, it costs too much money. And those are all myths. If you know how to cook, and if you really have your own garden, you've got it made. And a garden is, well, I just think of the allotments that were given to people in England during World War II. And they got a piece of land in Italy too, in England, all around Europe, and a piece of land where they could grow food. And many people kept them forever, and people have kept victory gardens that we were encouraged to plant. And there are many, many leaflets printed by the government telling you what to plant in every corner of this country. I was shocked to read one of these pamphlets that had 26 varieties of strawberries in Washington, D.C. And I think the idea that we can't do this. You have to just, buy food from the Safeway. Of course, I call it, I want to put up a big sign that says unsafe way. I'm going to do that little project one day in the middle of the night. But it's not true that it's too expensive. If you know what to buy, carrots, celery, onions, that's the basis for so much cooking, garlic, and greens and beans. And that it takes too much time. That's all of those myths. I read this book, and maybe We Are What We Eat, because I wanted to know how we changed, lost our values in this very short period of time from the end of World War II to now. We don't eat at the table anymore. Children have to have special food that only they like. You can't, it takes too much time. It's too much work. These are all myths, because I find huge pleasure. I can make myself breakfast in 3 minutes if I have a little stack of organic tortillas, and I made my pot of beans on Sunday, and I make a little tortilla, put in the beans and the spices, and it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, as long as it takes to warm it up. And it's a huge pleasure, and it's kind of it gives you a sense of self-sufficiency. And it's a beautiful thing. It's also beautiful to look at. You're making a salad with all these colors in it. And it's that gives you an everyday pleasure. It's not the eating in your car. One time I wrote about it in this book. I thought I'd better eat a McDonald's sometime in my life. And I happened to be in Salina, Kansas, going to the Land Institute. And there was nothing to eat. I thought, well, I'll just do this experiment. I'll just go the drive-through, see how long it takes, see what this hamburgers all about? Well, I did it in 4 minutes. I got it. I took a taste, and I thought, it tastes like nothing. You know, the French fries were kind of salty. I was done, put in the garbage right out the window, and that was the end of that. But that's not the great pleasure that food can give you. When you sit with your friends around the table, I cook with my friends every week. On Sunday, they all come over. They've gone to the farmer's market. We have a little talk. What are you going to bring? What are you going to bring? And we make a meal together. And it is so gratifying because my friend Tony's a great cook. I mean, he learned because he's Italian. And he had a grandmother who taught him how to cook. But we have always in this country farmed for quantity and not for flavor, taste. And we just don't have that. You know, a lot of us were Puritans, and we didn't sit at the table and have that pleasure. And it's very sad that we are not teaching our children in school. So that's, of course, my mission is to do this. But we really need to have the real food in the schools and teach that. And I'm hoping I can build this institute at Davis. They've asked me to do an institute for edible education and regenerative ag. And I want to make the most beautiful kitchen there for learning. And I think I have a picture, which I'll show you, of that kitchen. Do we want to have another? I'm too long in answering your question. Did I answer it? Okay.
Who else has got a question? Come on. You know, in many ways, I think what Alice just described could be described as a mindset. Certainly a choice about...
An activist mindset.
Yeah. Hi.
I'm Catherine. I study math here. I'm very happy to be here and enjoying this conversation. So as a hobbyist cook, I also tend to think
I
of...
can't hear.
Can you hear me? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So for me, cooking is a hobby, and I tend to think of it as something that does take a lot of time and does take sort of expensive ingredients. Can you offer suggestions or resources for people who live very fast lives, don't have a lot of time, don't have a lot of money, but still, want to engage in this? Like, how do we learn to cook more quickly? And where do we buy our food from?
Yes. Well, I think there are a lot of cookbooks out there that are particularly talking about affordable food from around the world. That is absolutely important because people have really developed dishes that are so flavorful. And I'm using, as I was saying, tortillas and the ideas of beans. They come in every color and shape. So you can have red beans one week and mix up the red and the white and the black. And so you're constantly having something beautiful there. And I think there are secrets in the Middle East. I almost think they might be in our genes way back when. And also, Indian food is liked by all of these kids at the Edible Schoolyard, these teenagers. They love to, make Japanese food, little roll your own sushi kind of thing with vegetables and dipping it in the sauce. And it really is of such a crime that we hear all the time, that it's not possible, it's not affordable, it's not good, and it's not available. And it's not true. It is. And I go shopping, you know, for my food at home once a week at the farmer's market. I either go to Berkeley or I go to the Ferry Plaza farmer's market. And once you get to know the farmers, and you know, they help you think about what you want to cook with the food that they have. And it's that relationship that I think is so valuable.
I
That-
love this question, and it comes up in this class. And I was thinking maybe this year, would there be a small group of people in this class that want to tackle that question and get practical about it
Yeah.
for their final project in this class? Because it's really, it comes up, and there's a lot of answers for it, and it has to do with where you buy, what you buy, how you prepare, who you do it with, what you don't waste. It's kind of exciting, but I think having some really practical examples, maybe if there's anyone here interested in this, come talk to us, the teaching team, and we could even stage a demonstration at the end of the class for some very practical ways that students who are very busy on constrained budgets are figuring out how to eat in a healthy and regenerative and fulfilling way. And I think one of the secrets is that it's not alone. It's together.
It is together, and I'd love to be part of that project.
Okay, well,
I
you
would
can
be- I
have,
have written this book, probably will come out next year with Penguin, about affordable school lunch. And I mean, I'm fitting into the USDA reimbursement, which is minuscule. And every meal is got 3 or 4 things on the dish, and they're all easy to make, and they change with the seasons. So I'll give you the working copy.
Oh, great.
And you can,
that's a wonderful
around.
challenge, is to try to cook with the USDA
Yeah.
restrictions on, and especially what they call a vegetable.
and I also bought all the food organically from a grocery store. So I didn't buy it from the farmer's market. I wanted to know that I could fit into that price range. It was very important.
Who else has got a question for Alice? Come on over. We want you to come to the microphone because then the people at home who are watching the live stream or the video can also hear the question. Thank you.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm a society and environment major, and I'm very interested in food systems now. Also, my parents are watching right now, so hi, Mom, hi, Dad. I told them they have to watch. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit just about like food and community. I come from a family, and my dad loves to cook, and we cook every night when we're at home and have meals together, so I really understand that feeling of community. So I kind of wanted to ask about what you can say about like eating together, coming together, eating food together at a table, how that can sort of challenge the fast food, fast work, fast lifestyle that a lot of us feel like we're in, and how that can also like bring solutions and community and happiness. Also, can you please tell the camera and my dad that it's time to start a farm or start a garden at our own home, because I really want to do that. But again, just I'd love to hear how how coming together and eating together is really a way to build community and happiness and solutions.
Well,
Thank you, Alex.
I do believe in eating together, and particularly when you have children, because it, it, it's the way that they learn. And I just was very determined that my daughter would learn those values. And she wrote a book about it. And it was mixed with, oh God, my mother is laying this on me, to really ending up, I love it. You know, it's something that really empowers everybody. And when you set the table, and just lighting candles on the table brings a kind of beauty into the room. Just that. Or just having some beautiful piece of fruit as a centerpiece. It's something that we do at the Edible Schoolyard Project. And one of the things that the kids love to do is find something that can be a centerpiece. And you won't believe what they find. I mean, one found a little boot and put flowers in the boot. And they get rocks. And it's just a way to really all participate. And that's what is very important, that it's not just the mother cooking the food. It's everybody has a little job. And it really is the place where we can talk about our lives. And I think the fact that we haven't been doing that for the last 50 years is really contributed to the breakup of families. I mean, can you imagine 1 in 2 people is divorced in this country? 1 in 2. We never talk about how that affects housing, how that affects children who have to decide. We're not teaching people how to get along with each other. And I see in the Edible Schoolyard classroom something that I never imagined, especially when I was in 7th grade. I mean, the boys were over there and the girls were over there. But they're all hanging out with each other. And it's a beautiful thing to see. That's a consequence. I feel like it's a consequence of working together in the kitchen or in the garden.
So Alex's dad, now's a great time to start a garden. Do you live in California, Alex? Okay, so the ground is really moist right now. The seeds are plentiful in the stores because all the seed growers really geared up during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And now's the time to get some soil amendments in there and some compost and design your garden. There's so many resources.
But do you
can always call me
that
too.
1 square yard of making the compost, just making it, saves 1 square yard of ozone. And I heard that probably 25 years ago, and I just said, I can make a square yard of compost, even if I don't use it. Just making it brings out these chemical things that are good for the ozone. So, I mean, agriculture is the place. I mean, we have so many hungry people. And yet, why isn't Biden planting a garden on the front lawn of the White House? Let's all sign a petition from this class and send it to him. It's a really good idea. Why don't you plant the lawn in front and give the food to the hungry children in Washington, D.C.? But be an example. Michelle Obama's garden, when that message went around the world, I was in Rome at the time, and there it was on the front page. Her out in the garden. So we know that we can do this, but it helps tremendously to have an example. And it's the reason that I do want to make a project work within the UC system. Whether it's at Berkeley, whether it's at Davis, one of the campuses, to show that we can buy directly from the farmers, cook that food, and eat it together. Maybe it's a dorm that wants to go all the way. I did one at Yale, and my kid was there. Now, one of the colleges, it just happened to be Berkeley College, and they said yes, that they wanted to go all the way, and all the students would eat the same food at dinner, and we had huge success. And the kids started falsifying IDs so they could get in and eat. And it lasted for about a year until the food service director changed, and they eliminated it. But the garden that we planted there is still thriving. And that's, 25 years. And now the garden even has people from 15 different departments at Yale using it. And there was a Hindu language class that came out there when I was there last, and they wanted to teach the students the names of all the herbs in the garden in Hindi. So it gave me really a lot of belief that this can happen really anywhere, any school, and that it has magic in it.
And you'll remember, if you were here last week or if you weren't, Nina from the Berkeley Food Institute mentioned the resources that are available here on campus to actually participate in growing. And this has been becoming more alive and more engaged. So hopefully you can, if you're interested, really getting an edible education starts really in the garden, in the dirt.
Now maybe we can all go one night and just dig up the crescent in front of the UC.
Wow,
the
she's
grass.
really-
And just dig it up.
Really getting radical at this stage of life, I think.
Who wants
Yeah.
to go? Who
Yeah.
wants to- All right. Come on.
Who else has got a question? Probably time for one more. Aniket. Come on down, and then we'll tell you about next week.
Hi, my name is Aniket. I'm in the Masters in Development Practice program. My question to you is regarding the Farm to School program. I wanted to know, especially in public schools, when you started out, did you get any sort of backlash from the state? And if so, what are the leverage points that you use to get the state buy-in and move the project forward?
To do the Edible Schoolyard project at Martin Luther King. You know, the great part about it was the principal of the school. He was willing to take the risk. So he did not, ask whether all the teachers we brought in had certification to teach. He didn't ask me about sharp knives. He trusted us to do this. And because he trusted us, we made sure that every student there knew how to carry a knife, how to use that knife. We didn't want anything to happen. But he was willing to take that risk. And I thank him every day. I think many, many people do. But it does take to go into the schools in the way that we did, takes an enlightened principal or somebody at the top. And to go, though, into the cafeteria is another story. That's run differently. And I have to say that there's kind of a radical group over there in Marin that's called the Conscious Kitchen. And they said, which is kind of the way I think, which is if you want to do something that is not approved, like to paint a kitchen pale yellow instead of white. You look at those rules, and if you paint it pale yellow, which is warmer and nicer, it just has to be cleanable, easily cleanable. You look at the rules closely, and I'm willing to violate rules that really don't make sense. And why can't we have an open kitchen? Why can't we have people look inside? Well, we had a fire at the restaurant, and the wall between the kitchen and the dining room burned. We never put it back up again. And the inspector of food, the health inspector, came by. Never mentioned anything. He said, this is the cleanest kitchen they've ever been into. We labeled all of everything in the refrigerators. Everything was done properly. It just was done differently. And it's, again, the corporate thinking, that especially for school cafeterias. It's all of a piece. We sell you all the aluminum stuff, the fluorescent lights, the metal tables, the whole thing. The microwaves. And it's not about cooking. And it's not about beauty. And it's not about collaboration. So I got to design the cafeteria at King and build it with the architects. And we're going to have, I'm going to photograph it so that people can really see it. But I wanted every kid to be able to sit down. I wanted high ceilings. I wanted wooden beams. I wanted copper lights. I wanted the kitchen dishwashing area to be the most beautiful. So I tiled it all with heath tiles, and I made windows so that the dishwashers could look to see the students and say hello. I had doors made to the back of the dishwashing area so they could go out and get some fresh air. And it was really with that in mind, that everybody in the kitchen should have a place that's beautiful to work. And big tables so you can all work together. And I know that once we break that whole thing down and understand where it's all coming from, we can devise a new system. And I know it's happening in the state of California. I know the powers that be there and Sacramento are working on this as we speak.
Well, I think this has been a class in questioning the status quo, and a couple of promises made that I think we're going to hold Alice to. But let's have a big hand for her.
Thank you.
This class wouldn't exist without Alice's cajoling, persistence, questioning the status quo, and we're grateful for her. It's also enduring. It's been going 12 years. That's pretty good for a class. We thank all of you for continuing the tradition. We'll kind of,
I just have to say a big thank you to Will, because I never imagined it could happen in the business school. And to think about humanizing businesses. I want every business to stop at lunchtime and everybody to eat together. I mean, it's where you get those ideas, the collaboration.
thank you.
Thank you.
Alice. Well, for something completely different, one of the students wrote me this week and said, well, what did you look like when you were a mime? So, and I have to tell you, the question on the photo on the right, no Photoshop. That was before you could take an image out of a background. That was a lot lighter. Okay, Viana. And okay, you do your thing. I'll stand over here.
Okay, everybody, so this week's assignment, the first one is going to be the discussion board where you reflect on your thoughts on the wonderful conversation today we had with Alice Waters. So your other assignment will be on food values. So for this assignment, you'll choose 5 values that most resonate with you, with who you are as a person and what you value most. On the B Courses page, there's a big chart listing a bunch of different values, but please feel free to pick values that are not in the chart, anything that resonates with you. So once you've chosen your 5 core values, describe how these values are playing out in your day-to-day life. How do these play out in the classroom, when you're having conversations with your friends, family, at home, everywhere? So once you reflect on that, continue to reflect and ask yourself, are your personal values consistent with your food values and the choices you make? The choices you make at the grocery store, at restaurants, at the dining commons, all of that. So are the habits that you also resonate on the habits that you've developed regarding your food habits? And lastly, describe how your values are aligned or misaligned with your food choices and habits. So here you're basically comparing your life values with your food values. And that will be due next Tuesday at midnight.
Thank you. You want to do attendance?
Do you want to do attendance now?
Sure, we'll do attendance.
So attendance will be next. Yes.
While you're doing your attendance, Marion Nessel, who I mentioned, Marion is the author of many, many books, kind of a lot of the seminal books on how to eat and on food politics. Marion was really instrumental in creating one of the very first food graduate programs, food studies programs at NYU. She's flying in from New York just to be with us. She's also going to, as I mentioned, give a keynote at the Plant Future Symposium. And if you'd like to come to that, we have a book signing during the day with her on Saturday. Everybody good for? Everybody got the QR code? Anybody need more time? A little more time? And I just want to thank the teaching team for all they're doing to really bring this class to fruition. So I want to have a big hand for them too. We'll see you next week. Thanks again.
Okay.